This presentation about Ted Bundy is given to you by Group 3, Thomas Conrad, Jordan Chirinos, Emily Diltz, and Jordan Schnorr. Ted Bundy was originally named Theodore Robert Cowell. He was born on November 24, 1946, in Vermont. Trouble started the day he was born. His mother, Eleanor Cowell, was not married when she gave birth to Ted Bundy, so he was an illegitimate child in the eyes of his heavily religious grandparents. So from the very start, Ted Bundy was a shame to the family and had never met his father. In 1951, his mother married an individual named Johnny Bundy, passing on his last name to Ted. He was eventually adopted by his grandparents and raised to think that his mother was his sister and his grandparents were his parents. When he found out about this, he was very shooken up. This had also occurred around the time of a traumatic breakup. Ted Bundy was emotionally detached, shy, and introverted. Although he was doing really well academically, he was struggling with social development. Despite his inability to understand others, he pretended to be as normal as he could. Ted Bundy had a pretty normal childhood. Despite this, it was around his time in high school that he developed an interest with sex and violence, as well as doing petty crimes like stealing. He also peeped in other people's windows for satisfaction. He later went on to get a higher education and also fallen in love, only to end in a tragic breakup. His future killings resemble his ex-girlfriend. He attended various college institutions, with the end result leaving him with a psychology degree and accepted into law school to eventually drop out. It is very hard to say why he decided to kill all those women. Some would say he was motivated by sex and power. Some would say that he simply just liked killing. Throughout his life, he showed an unusual interest in death and injury. This could have led to the tragic beginning and end of Ted Bundy and his victims.
Sure, I get angry. I get very angry and indignant. I don't like being locked up for something I didn't do, and I don't like my liberty taken away, and I don't like being treated like an animal, and I don't like people walking around and ogling me like I'm some sort of weirdo, because I'm not.
Ted Bundy, one of the most notorious serial killers in U.S. history, murdered 35 or more people over a span of 4 years. He was known for using his looks and his charismatic personality to lure young women to isolated locations, where he would bludgeon, rape, and in some cases perform necrophilic acts with the corpses. Only convicted for 30 homicides, estimates have put the number as high as 100 or even more. Ted Bundy can be classified as a Factor 1 psychopath. Factor 1 psychopathy is often associated with an inflated sense of worth, pathological lying, manipulative behavior, a lack of empathy, as well as a failure to accept responsibility for one's own actions. These tendencies can be seen in Ted Bundy's behavior. He clearly showed no empathy towards his victims, even in interviews following his imprisonment. That he could easily fool his victims by feigning an injury evidences his ability to manipulate. Additionally, since he had studied psychology extensively in college, he was able to fool various psychological tests that were administered to him. Even after confessing his crimes, he sometimes tried to claim that he was innocent up until his execution. He is very intelligent, but also insecure. This insecurity is thought to have stemmed from his lack of wealth as a young adult and a fear of being humiliated by women. He was deeply resentful of his adopted father, who he criticized, saying he wasn't very bright and he didn't make much money. His general mistrust and disturbed obsession towards women almost certainly began with his mother's deception regarding his true parentage. This, combined with the perceived humiliation of his college girlfriend, Stephanie Brooks, probably fueled his hatred for women. Bundy had an overwhelming need to control his victims. Killers who commit necrophilia often do so in order to feel dominant over their victims, even after their victim's death. Ted Bundy would often revisit the scenes of his crimes to groom and perform sexual acts with the decomposing corpses, ignoring their state of putrefaction. In the same vein of dominance, he also occasionally killed by breaking into houses and killing victims while they slept. At one point, he took trophies in the form of 4 heads, which he stored in his apartment. What allowed Bundy to continue killing for as long as he did was his ability to plan and his knowledge of police procedures. Because of his organized methodology, he rarely left weapons or other evidence behind, and had well thought out plans to transport bodies.
Bundy began killing approximately 1 girl a month. In fact, later on, the police would produce what they called the Girl of the Month Club, as they traced the girls who disappeared and then were later found dead.
During a grisly killing spree that spanned 5 years, Ted Bundy slaughtered more than 35 women in a grisly bloodbath that took him through Washington State, Oregon, Utah, Idaho, and Colorado.
1974 was the official beginning of the Bundy killings, but many believe the killings actually started in 1961 with the disappearance of 8-year-old Anne Marie Burr. He would have been 14 years old. The major factor implicating Bundy's involvement in this disappearance is that the Burr house was on Bundy's newspaper route. Unfortunately, only circumstantial evidence implicates him in the disappearance, and he was never formally charged. 1974, January 4th. 18-year-old Joni Lenz was sexually assaulted and bludgeoned as she slept, but she did survive. This was the official beginning of the Bundy attacks and murders. On February 1st, 1974, Linda Ann Healy was bludgeoned while asleep. Only her skull was found on a mountain site Bundy used as a burial ground for some of his other victims. She was only 21 years old. On March 12, 1974, Donna Gail Manson was abducted while walking to a concert at Evergreen State College. Her body was never found. She was 19 years old. April 17, 1974. Suzanne Elaine Raincourt, who was 18 years old, disappeared after a meeting with her advisor at Central Washington State College. Her skull was found at Taylor Mountain site. May 6, 1974. Roberta Kathleen Parks vanished from Oregon State University. Her skull was recovered at Taylor Mountain site. She was 22 years old. June 1st, 1974. 22-year-old Brenda Carol Ball disappeared after leaving the Flame Tavern in Buren. Her skull was recovered at Taylor Mountain site. On June 11, 1974, Georgianne Hawkins was abducted from an alley behind her sorority house. Her remains were recovered at Issaquah River site. She was 18 years old. On July 14, 1974, Janice Ann Ott was abducted from Lake Sammamish State Park in broad daylight. She was 23 years old. Her remains were recovered at Issaquah River site. Also on July 14th, Denise Marie Nasland, who was 19 years old, was abducted only 4 short hours after Ott from the same park. Her remains were also recovered at Issaquah River site. On October 2nd, 1974, Nancy Wilcox was ambushed, assaulted, and strangled in Holiday, Utah. Bundy said he buried her near Capitol Reef National Park, but her body was never found. She was only 16 years old. October 18, 1974, Melissa Ann Smith, who was 17, vanished from Midvale, Utah. Her body was found in nearby mountainous area. October 31st, 1974, Laura Ann Amy disappeared from Leigh, Utah. Her body was discovered at American Fork Canyon by hikers. She was 17 years old. November 8th, 1974, Ted Bundy attempted to abduct Carol DeRange in Murray, Utah. She escaped and survived. She was 18 years old. Also on the 8th of November, Deborah Kent vanished after leaving a school play in Bountiful, Utah. Bundy said he left her body near Fairview, Utah, but her body was never found. She was 17 years old. On January 12, 1975, Karen Campbell, who was 23, disappeared from a hotel hallway in Snowmass, Colorado. Her body was discovered on a dirt road near the hotel. On March 15, 1975, Julie Cunningham disappeared on her way to a bar in Vail, Colorado. Bundy said he buried her body near Rifle, Colorado, but it was never found. She was 26 years old. On April 6, 1975, Denise Oliverson was abducted while bicycling to her parents' house in Grand Junction, Colorado. Bundy said he threw her body into the Colorado River, but it was never found. She was 25. May 6, 1975, Lynette Culver was abducted from Almeda Junior High School in Pocatello, Idaho. She was 12 years old. Bundy said he threw her body into the Snake River, but it was never found. On June 28, 1975, Susan Curtis disappeared during a youth conference at Birmingham Young University. Her body was never found. She was only 15 years old. On January 15, 1978, at the Chi Omega sorority house of Florida State University, Margaret Bowman, 21, and Lisa Levy, 20, were both bludgeoned and strangled as they slept. Also that night, Karen Chandler, 21, Kathy Kleiner, 21, and Cheryl Thomas, 21, were beaten, but they did survive. On February 9, 1978, Kimberly Diane Leach was abducted from her junior high school in Lake City, Florida. Her remains were found near Suwannee River State Park. She was only 12 years old. This was the final murder from Ted Bundy. Although there are only 20 confirmed kills from Ted Bundy, I'm sure there are many more, and there are many unsolved murders that are attributed to the possibility that Ted Bundy did commit them.
Nothing fazed Ted Bundy, even being featured as the lead story on the evening news.
Have you ever physically harmed anyone?
Ever physically harmed anyone? No. No. You know, again, not in the context I think that you're speaking of.
Ted was very self-assured to the point of cockiness.
August 16th, 1975, 9 months after the attempted abduction of Carol DeRoche, Ted Bundy refused to stop for police after running a stop sign. A search of his car revealed handcuffs, a ski mask, a crowbar, an ice pick, and other burglary tools. He was subsequently arrested on suspicion of burglary, but with the massive amounts of evidence piling up against him, he was charged with aggravated kidnapping. He waived his right to a jury and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. After this, he was extradited to Colorado to stand trial for the Colorado murders. He decided to serve as his own lawyer, and this allowed him to move around freely in the prison library and the courtroom. Standing trial again, in June 25, 1979, he acted as his own attorney for the murder of the sorority girls. He was found guilty and sentenced to 2 death sentences. He stood trial again in 1980 for the murder of Kimberly Leach, and an additional death sentence was added on. He acted extremely abnormal during the proceedings, including fits of anger and haunting stares. He also married his key witness, Carol Boone, while she was on the stand. Just before his death, he admitted to killing more than 50 women, blaming his addiction to porn for his urges. On January 24th, 1989, at 7:13 a.m., Theodore Bundy died while a crowd of people cheered.